As West Asia remains on the brink of a wider conflict, the global economy is showing signs of stress. America is facing fresh recession fears. AI is bleeding big tech. Chip makers like Intel are losing cash. Layoffs have been ordered. In China too, the economy is showing no signs of recovery. So Xi Jinping is attempting an image makeover with some help from Chinese mouthpieces. A new controversy has erupted at the Paris Olympics over the gender of an Algerian boxer. From J.K. Rowling to Elon Musk, critics say a man is being allowed to beat a woman for entertainment. The US and Russia, despite their differences, have accomplished the largest East-West prisoner swap. We'll also tell you why Turkey has blocked Instagram. And the mystery of the screaming mummy in Egypt has finally been solved. All this and more coming up. The headlines first. West Asia remains on edge. Iran and its allies prepare to respond to Israel. They vow to avenge the deaths of Hamas and Hezbollah leaders. Hezbollah chief warns Israel of an inevitable response. The leader of Yemen's Iran-backed Houthi rebels also promises to retaliate. The US says it will defend Israel against all threats from Iran. Venezuela's opposition calls for protests in every city tomorrow. It comes amid the disputed re-election of President Nicolas Maduro. Maduro's victory has defied pre-election polls and has drawn global criticism. Maduro has led oil-rich Venezuela since 2013. Macau refuses visa to a Taiwanese foreign ministry official. The visa was denied after the official refused to sign the One China affidavit. Since 2019, Macau's government has insisted that Taiwanese officials sign the affidavit to get their visas. In 1999, Portugal had returned Macau to China. Monsoon mayhem in India. At least 14 people killed in floods in the northern state of Uttarakhand. Around 700 people were airlifted while travelling to the Kedarnath temple. Kedarnath is a popular pilgrimage destination. This week, deadly landslides killed more than 300 people in the southern state of Kerala. And a Miss South Africa contestant faces xenophobic backlash. Many people have questioned her right to compete for the title. The contestant's father is Nigerian and her mother is a naturalized South African citizen, but the 23-year-old was born in South Africa. Is America heading towards a recession? We ask because US markets are jittery once again. There was a sell-off on Wall Street yesterday. Tech stocks took a heavy beating. The Dow Jones and S&P 500 are America's biggest stock benchmarks, the largest stock benchmarks in the US. Both of them fell by over 1%. Investors are feeling nervous again. They're looking for a safety net. Some broad economic trends are making them nervous. There are signs of distress in the job market, plus manufacturing is slowing down. Some fresh economic data has come out, and that has heightened recession fears. Let's look at this data. First, we have employment. More Americans are filing for unemployment benefits. There's a sharp spike in weekly claims. They've crossed to 249,000. Now, this is for the week that ended on the 27th of July. This year, this number has fluctuated between 194,000 and 245,000. That has been the broad range. But now unemployment benefit claims are above the upper limit of this range. And why is this worrying? Because more Americans are filing for unemployment claims than before. New applications have hit an 11-month high, which means fewer jobs are being generated. And that is a cause of concern. What about those who already have a job? How are they faring? Well, they've not been spared from the bad news either. Wages and benefits are growing slowly at a rate of less than 1%. That's the lowest quarterly rate in 3 years, less than 1%. So those waiting for a salary hike in the US should keep their expectations low. Unemployment still remains low in America compared to other places. It is hovering around just 4%. But the fresh data this week indicates that the job market is stressed. Job creation seems to have taken a hit. And that's the first major concern. The second concern is about manufacturing. Manufacturing activity appears to be slowing down. The index that measures this is called PMI. PMI is the Purchasing Managers Index. It has dropped to an 8-month low. In the month of July, it fell to 46.8. Now, ideally, this number should stay above 50. Last month, it was 46.8. This is also impacting job creation. Reports say factories are either reducing staff or instituting a hiring freeze. And this could mean that there's a slowdown in manufacturing as well. One reason for this could be the interest rates. The U.S. Federal Reserve is America's central bank. It's also called the Fed. Now, the Fed regulates the rate of borrowing. This week, the Fed held a review and it kept the interest rates unchecked.
Today, the FOMC decided to leave our policy interest rate unchanged and to continue to reduce our securities holdings. We are maintaining our restrictive stance of monetary policy in order to keep demand in line with supply and reduce inflationary pressures.
For a year now, the Fed has kept the interest rates steady in the U.S., and this is to fight inflation. But high interest rates also have a downside. They squeeze excess money out of the economy. And critics of the Fed say that high interest rates are hurting manufacturing in America. There is less money for expansion. They argue that the rate should have been cut sooner. The Fed is now promising a rate cut in the month of September, but experts fear that this could further affect growth.
I would say to Jay Powell, careful what you wish for, my friend. You were fighting for the 2% inflation. Well, to get to 2%, there's collateral damage. And collateral damage is a slowing of the economy.
Investors are trying to avoid risk. They're moving away from the stock markets and towards the treasuries. That's government debt, the money that governments raise from the open market for their expenses. Commonly, they're called government bonds. This is the money that a government borrows. Now, usually, they're safer than the stock market. It's a safe bet to invest in, and they offer a steady rate of interest. And there is safety of capital, of course, since governments are less likely to default. There is a rally in the American bond market. Bond buying has now picked up, especially after the events in West Asia this week, the attacks in Lebanon and Iran, where leaders of Hezbollah and Hamas were targeted. So investors are being careful now. They're factoring in geopolitical risks while making their investment decisions. But America's latest economic data is also worrying. It points towards weakening economic activity. It seems like a recession cannot be ruled out just yet. So Wall Street is a bit shaky, and a big reason for that is chip companies, your Intels and Nvidias. They're all part of the same race, the race to produce artificial intelligence chips, AI chips. But some have had more success than others. Just look at Intel. They dominate computer chips. Around 69% of all CPUs use an Intel chip. But when it comes to AI chips, Intel is way behind. Nvidia and AMD are the companies in the lead here. So Intel has a plan to turn things around, and the first step is cutting cost. No surprises how. Intel is laying off people. The company is cutting 15% of its workforce, which is around 15,000 jobs. They're going to lay off 15,000 people. Listen to how the CEO explained his decision. And I'm quoting from what he said. Our revenues have not grown as expected, and we are yet to fully benefit from powerful trends like AI. Our costs are too high. Our margins are too low. It's like ChatGPT wrote this. But will this be enough to bail Intel out? Well, the CEO is right about one thing. Intel is bleeding money. They lost $1.6 billion in the second quarter and $437 million in the first quarter. Compare this to their main rival, which is Nvidia. Nvidia made $14.8 billion in the first quarter. So the fortunes are very, very different. The question is why? Intel and Nvidia have one major difference. Nvidia only designs chips. Intel also produces them. And the production business is the one that is eating up money. Last year, they lost $7 billion in manufacturing chips. That's a problem that Nvidia does not have. They simply design advanced AI chips. The production of these chips is usually done in other countries like Japan or South Korea or Taiwan by other companies. But Intel is not giving up. They're not abandoning their manufacturing business. They're doubling down on it, in fact, mainly because of the U.S. government. In 2022, U.S. President Joe Biden introduced what's called the CHIPS Act. It set aside around $50 billion for American chip makers, $50 billion. The idea was quite simple: make America a chip-making powerhouse. Now, Intel has benefited from this program. They've got $8.5 billion in direct funding, plus $11 billion in cheap loans. And what does Intel plan to do with this money? Well, they plan to set up factories around America. So the company has a long-term plan here. First, focus more on manufacturing chips. And second, latch on to the US campaign, which brings us to Intel's rivals. What are they planning to do? Nvidia is riding high on confidence, but it could be a bumpy road ahead. Just look at the last 1 month. First, Nvidia shares lost $430 billion in a sell-off. Then they gained $329 billion in a single day. So the AI journey will not be linear. Much like any industry, it will have its ups and downs. Let's look at some more numbers. Nvidia shares are 11% down in the last 1 month. But they're 65% up if you look at the last 6 months. Same with AMD. The shares are 20% down in the last 1 month, but 20% up compared to August last year. So expect a similar trajectory going forward. There are 2 reasons for this. One is demand. Every tech company is looking for AI chips, and they have paid billions of dollars to the likes of Nvidia and AMD, but the returns are yet to come. Consider OpenAI, the poster boy of AI companies. They are projected to lose $5 billion this year. They could run out of cash by 2025. Now, the rule of economics is quite clear. You need returns on your investment. If not, you will look elsewhere. And right now, the AI bet has not started making money. Maybe it will by the end of this decade, but that requires tech firms to stick with it. And that's a big if. Factor number 2 is politics. Reports say Joe Biden will announce a new trade policy soon. It will curb chip imports from China. At the same time, it will exempt imports from allied nations like Japan or South Korea or the Netherlands. So we could soon have 2 camps in this industry. There's going to be a Chinese camp and a Western one. And those tensions will also affect the AI race. So these are volatile times for chip firms. They are still refining their strategies, seeing what works for them, and adjusting to political realities. There will be ups and downs in the stock prices. If you're brave, you can cash in. Unfortunately, there's more bad news for the global economy. China's economy is showing no signs of recovery. Experts were hoping for a course correction last month when top Chinese leaders met for their 3rd plenum. This meeting happens every 5 years. Communist Party officials gather in Beijing to chart out the economic policy of the country. Usually, this forum is used to announce big bang reforms. But this year, there were no such announcements. Instead, Xi Jinping is resorting to what he knows best: fixing the narrative. The Chinese president has written a letter. It is addressed to business owners in Hong Kong. And what does it say? Xi Jinping has asked this community, the business community, to leverage their strengths to speed up economic integration with the mainland and play a role in China's development. It basically sounds like a list of demands, but pro-Communist Party commentators do not see it that way. They say Xi Jinping's letter is an outreach. It shows, quote-unquote, special care for Hong Kong's business owners. The city's leader, John Lee, spoke out as well, and he thanked Xi Jinping for this letter, calling it, and I'm quoting, deeply encouraging and inspiring. Now, John Lee, you would remember, was appointed by Beijing, so he is expected to toe the party line and amplify Beijing's agenda. For a few weeks now, China has been trying to push similar messages. They paint Xi Jinping as a business-friendly leader, as someone who supports the private sector. Like this Xinhua article. Xinhua is a mouthpiece of the Chinese state. Last month, they published a piece. It called Xi Jinping, and I'm quoting again, a true reformer. The article compared Xi Jinping to Deng Xiaoping, the leader who opened up China to the world. Now, this piece promised more economic reforms, and I'm quoting, the easy part of the reforms has finished, but Xi refused to rest on the laurels of his predecessors and determined to steam ahead. Very well, if that's the case, why is China censoring pro-business commentary? Like in the case of Hu Shijin, he's been muzzled. He's the former editor of Global Times, better known as the wolf warrior of the Chinese internet. He's famous for his nationalistic commentary on Chinese social media. He has almost 25 million followers on Weibo, that is China's version of Twitter or X. Now, Beijing has banned Hu from Weibo. He has to stay away from the platform for 30 days at least. And what is this punishment for? A post about the Chinese economy. A few days ago, Hu had written on the 3rd plenum, and he said that China will no longer differentiate between public and private companies, that there will be no discrimination They'll all be treated the same. That's what he wrote. And for some reason, this post did not sit well with the Communist Party, so they censored Hu Xijin for it. His account on Weibo has been suspended. So on one hand, Xi Jinping and China are talking about reform. On the other, they are censoring pro-business commentary, which makes you wonder how serious is China about fixing its economy. Xi Jinping's economic policy is full of such mixed messages. Experts in China are now criticizing Beijing's approach to its economic challenges. An influential official is raising his voice. His name is Huang Yiping. He's an advisor to China's central bank, and Huang has written an assessment about the Chinese economy. He's called on Chinese officials to do a number of things like step up spending in the economy, extend cash handouts to households, and focus on bringing down inflation. Such open criticism is rare in China. So we do hope that Huang Yiping is not punished for speaking out. His assessment clearly suggests that the Chinese economy is a facade now. It appears impressive from the outside, but it is decaying within. If you've been tracking the Olympics, you must have seen this story. It is not about medals, it's not about a new record, it's about an athlete's gender. Here's what happened. A round of 16 boxing match was underway on Thursday. Italy's Angela Carini versus Algeria's Imane Khelif. The match lasted just 46 seconds. Khelif landed some brutal blows in the opening seconds, so Carini threw in the towel. The Italian broke down later. She said she'd never been punched like this. So what exactly happened here? Well, Khelif had failed a gender test last year, so she is being called a trans woman, someone who was born male and later transitioned to a woman. You can see why this is worrying. Suppose a person has been through male puberty, they have longer arms, they have bigger muscles or longer legs. So when they transition to being a woman, they retain some of those advantages. And we are not the ones saying this. World Athletics admitted this in their report, which is why letting trans women compete in women's sports is so controversial. The argument is that it's unfair. So everyone jumped into this controversy. Elon Musk, J.K. Rowling, Donald Trump, all of them, even Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, all of them said that a man had beaten up a woman. Now, I know this is a sensitive issue. So first, let's look at the facts. Is Imane Khelif a trans woman? The fact is that she is not. There are no transgender athletes at the Paris Olympics. Khelif was born a woman. She has female reproductive organs, and she has always participated in events for women. Let's also look at her track record. In 2018, she took part in the Women's World Boxing Championship. She finished 17th. In 2021, she took part in the Tokyo Olympics. She was knocked out in the quarters. In 2022, she participated in the Istanbul Women's World Championship, where she finished second. It was only last year that her gender was questioned. Khelif was disqualified from the 2023 World Championship, which is organized by the IBA, the International Boxing Association. They disqualified her. And why was she disqualified? Because of a medical test. The IBA has not released the complete details yet, but one official said that Khelif had male chromosome combination. What does that mean? Men have XY chromosomes, women have XX chromosomes. And the IBA said that Khelif had the XY combination. So she and another boxer were both disqualified. Then how is she competing in Paris? Because the IBA is not recognized by the Olympic Association. So the rules in Paris are different. They look at the gender on the passport. And they also have their own medical tests. So the organizers say that this controversy is completely baseless.
These two athletes were the victims of a sudden and arbitrary decision by the IBA. Towards the end of the IBA World Championships in 2023, they were suddenly disqualified without any due process. The current aggression against these two athletes is based entirely on this arbitrary decision, which was taken without any proper procedure, especially considering that these athletes had been competing in top-level competition for many years.
Let's focus on the medical angle now. Why does Khelif have XY chromosomes? It's a rare condition involving genes and hormones. You may have heard of testosterone. Women are also capable of producing testosterone, but in very small quantities. Except in some women, it is different. Their bodies naturally produce more testosterone, and those women may not fit the society's definition of a woman. And that's the controversy here, basically. Should such women be allowed in female sports? There are two camps here, two sets of arguments. One camp says, what is the problem? Athletes always benefit from natural advantages. Some are taller than others, some have longer limbs. If all of that is fine, why is this different? The other camp says this is different. Testosterone is different. It gives these women a competitive edge. And in sports like boxing, it can be outright dangerous. So what's the way out? Well, first I'll tell you what's not the way out. Hate mongering. Imani Khalif was born a biological woman. She has never undergone sex change procedures. In fact, it's illegal in her country. So to call her a man is unacceptable. And so is targeting the entire trans community. Some celebrities have realized this mistake, like professional fighter Logan Paul. He first called Khalif a man. Later, he apologized for spreading misinformation. The same applies to the other side as well. You cannot use ideology to decide this debate. People may identify differently from their assigned gender at birth, but in sports, that alone is not enough. You need to back it up with science. There are so many sports scientists in this world. Bring the best ones together, organize trials and studies, understand the science, and then take a definitive call. You cannot have one set of rules for the World Boxing Championship and another set for the Olympics. So the governing bodies need to step up here. Their failures led to this controversy in the first place. Now they must resolve it. The Olympics is the biggest sporting event in the world. There are wins, there are losses, and obviously there are controversies, and the Paris Games are no different. From Chinese athletes under the scanner for doping to a convicted rapist taking part in the Games, diplomatic tiffs with referees, allegations of cheating, and even photos with judges. Everything seems to be a scandal at the Paris Games this year. Our next story looks at the top controversies of the Olympics so far.
The Olympics may have just started, but there's no stopping Zhang Yufei. After all, she's China's butterfly queen. Since the Olympics began, she has won 3 bronze medals. A great achievement for many out there, but for Zhang, it's bittersweet. She's been eyeing the gold, and it was not unrealistic. After all, she's one of China's best swimmers. But her run may have been derailed by a controversy. In the last 10 days, the Chinese swimming team has undergone 200 doping tests. It's because of a doping scandal at the Tokyo Olympics. Half of the team tested positive for a banned substance, a banned heart drug called trimetazidine. The swimmers were soon cleared by China's anti-doping agency. Beijing said they were contaminated, but the pressure is apparent. China believes the testing regime is hurting the team. But while all eyes are on China's swimming team, here's someone who's trying to slip under the radar. Steven van der Velde. He's a Dutch volleyball player. He raped a 12-year-old girl. He was convicted. He was sentenced to 4 years in prison, yet he was released after just 12 months. And now he's playing for the Dutch team at the Games. The Dutch Volleyball Federation may have no comments, but spectators did not let it go easily. They booed him right before his opening match. The 29-year-old eventually lost the match to Italy. He didn't have much to say about the loss, but losses are a touchy subject at this year's game. Take the men's foil event. Italy's Filippo Macchi lost against Hong Kong's Chung Kalong, and citizens were furious. Italians said that they were robbed, so Hong Kong hit back. Netizens responded with posts on loving pineapple pizza and pasta with soy sauce. But snubbing on the internet is one thing, filing a complaint is another. So Italy's Olympic Committee filed a formal complaint. It said that it was unhappy with the referees from the match. Why? Because they belonged to South Korea and Taipei. Italy complained that they are geographically closer to Hong Kong. And it's not the only time judges have been under the scanner. This year, an Australian surfing judge was removed from the Olympics. Why? Because he posed on Instagram with an Australian Olympic surfer and the team coach. Soon, the photo blew up on the internet, and the International Surfing Association had to comment. They called it inappropriate, and the judge, Ben Lowe, was removed from his post. So, doping allegations, rapists taking part. allegations against judges, and controversy over an Instagram picture. Well, we guess no Olympics is complete without its share of controversies. The Olympics go on till the 11th of August, but it has already seen its fair share of drama.
Now we turn to Africa, to Nigeria and the West, where massive protests have erupted against bad governance. The protests began yesterday. They're expected to go on for at least 10 days, but already we see signs of a crackdown. The Nigerian police are accused of killing at least 13 protesters. Dozens of others have been arrested. A curfew has been imposed in 3 Nigerian states, and the police say that they will bring in the military if the need arises. It's already a tense situation, and terrorists seem to be taking advantage of this. Boko Haram reportedly attacked a market in northern Nigeria. It was a suicide bombing. At least 16 people were killed. Our next report has more.
Wait, officer, wait! Officer, wait!
That chilling video was from Nigeria.
Wait!
From the Tudunwada suburb of the city of Kaduna. You can clearly hear him pleading with the police officers. This isn't the complete video. The rest of it is too graphic to show. After this, the man taking the video is seen on the ground with open wounds in his abdomen. 3 people died in Kaduna yesterday. They were reportedly killed by security personnel. The Kaduna police say that they didn't fire live ammunition, and they stuck to firing tear gas shells. But at least 3 protesters died in Kaduna. They're among the 13 casualties attributed to the Nigerian police forces. 3 in Kaduna, 6 in the Niger state, and 4 in the state of Borno. The Nigerian police forces are fighting against protesters all over the country. Nigerians have taken to the streets to protest against bad governance. The protests began yesterday. They're expected to last for at least 10 days. These demonstrations are being organized online under the hashtag #EndBadGovernance. People are protesting against the cost of living crisis in Nigeria, against rising levels of hunger. 4 states have imposed 24-hour curfews: Borno and Yobe in the northeast, and Kano and Katsina in the north. A dusk-to-dawn curfew has also been imposed in the central state of Nasarawa. These states are seen as the epicenters of violence. All over Nigeria, there were reports of clashes and looting.
They back body TV, body fridge, they come out the compressor, everything that woman is using to live in house. They pack everything, including shoes for them. They pack. They can stack my bag, remove my bag that I'm using to put my clothes. Put the clothes, carry some clothes, put inside. Back the kaya inside my box, they carry it around.
Yesterday's protests were largely peaceful when they began, but some people have been accused of hijacking them to commit crimes like arson and looting. And it gets worse. Terrorists are also trying to take advantage of the chaos in Nigeria. The terror group Boko Haram carried out a suicide bombing. A market in the state of Borno was attacked. Reports say that at least 16 people have been killed. The attack took place on the eve of the protests. Nigeria's police chief put out a statement last night. He said that the police was equipped to respond appropriately to the unfolding situation, and it'll get assistance from other security agencies, including the military if the need arises. More police patrols were seen today, and some of the protesters are accusing them of intimidation.
The security outfits, officers, they are manning everywhere. And I can tell you that there is so much of fear they are trying to instill in people's heart for coming out to a protest today. And that is what is going on right now as we speak.
Will the protesters back down after violence on day 1? Or will they keep growing in number? We'll be tracking the story as it develops.
about games which are women, because women who are genetically and biologically women,
Yes.
the XX chromosome, they have a different construct, and that's why the physicality is different. And clearly, when the genetics and the biological construct is different, it becomes an unequal sum game there and a competition. And this has been raised in athletics. It's now being raised in boxing, and boxing is a huge contact sport. And this IBA bunglings has also caused someone like a two-time world champion like Nikhat Zareen to have to fight, unseeded. And that's because of this ongoing fracas between the IOC and the IBA. So there are a lot of bunglings which have happened at Paris 2024 across various disciplines, and especially in boxing, this has created a huge, and it's sparked off a big debate, because this whole aspect of ultra-liberalism, wokeism, and in that case, are the real genders being compromised? And why not create a separate discipline and a separate category which, for anybody can classify it as fluid, and whoever wants to, however they identify themselves, they can go ahead and participate in that third gender or the other gender category, and create at least there is a fair play and a fair on an even keel for women, biologically women and biological men. So that is something which is now a huge debate that's sparked off. There are multiple points of view to this. You have to give the freedom to identify some people, to identify however they identify themselves. But is that loophole, is that freedom being abused? And what about the freedom?
Every day we tell you stories of countries at odds, of posturing, saber-rattling, war-mongering. But this story is a little different. It's about a prisoner swap between America and Russia, the biggest one since the Cold War. The deal included 24 detainees, 7 countries, and nearly 18 months of behind-the-scenes negotiations. It's one of those rare wins for diplomacy. In fact, for quiet diplomacy. You may not see it, but this is proof that it's still happening, even among countries that are at loggerheads. Our next report tells you how Moscow and Washington pulled it off.
Once the planes landed, all was well. Joe Biden greeted them with hugs. Vladimir Putin shook hands. The West and Russia exchanged prisoners, and 18 months of quiet diplomacy had finally succeeded.
And then what I said, alliances make a difference. They stepped up, they took a chance for us. It mattered a lot. So I'm delighted they're home.
24 prisoners in 7 different countries. The United States, Germany, Poland, Slovenia, Norway, Russia and Belarus. They were exchanged in the Turkish capital, Ankara. This was the biggest prisoner swap since the Cold War. Insider details suggest it started in late 2022. America and Russia were negotiating the release of Brittany Griner, the American basketball player. It was a secret negotiation. But Moscow made one thing very clear. They wanted only one person back, a man named Vadim Krasikov. Krasikov is a Russian hitman. He's also a former intelligence officer. He was accused of killing a Chechen dissident in Berlin. He was serving a life sentence in Germany. Krasikov was close to Vladimir Putin. The Russian president once called him a patriot. Thus began months of back-channel negotiations. America communicated to Germany that Russia wanted Krasikov. They did not get a definitive answer, but there was headway in March 2023. Russia arrested Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich. A day later, Biden called his national security advisor Jake Sullivan. He wanted Gershkovich and former Marine Paul Whelan back home. The key to that was Krasikov. To make it happen, America had to get Germany on its side. Sullivan met his Germany counterpart. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken brought it up with the German foreign minister. Joe Biden raised the issue in a call with the German chancellor. In February 2024, Olaf Scholz was in America. Biden met him and Scholz conveyed his willingness. He told Biden he would do it for him. So the quiet diplomacy was going well. But then came a major blow, the death of Alexei Navalny. The Putin rival died in a Russian prison. His death put the entire deal in danger. It all happened during the Munich Security Conference. Vice President Kamala Harris was there and she jumped in. She met with Olaf Scholz to convince him. But it wasn't only Germany that Washington had to get on board. There was also Slovenia. They had 2 Russian nationals that were in their custody. So Biden had to press the Slovenian Prime Minister as well. And he was doing it on July 21st, just hours before he dropped out from the presidential race. It's only in the last few weeks that Moscow came on board. Russia said it was open to a deal. Gershkovich got a lightning-fast trial. He was convicted. So was US-Russian journalist Alsu Kurmasheva. It looked like Moscow was in a hurry, and that was the biggest sign. Moscow treats conviction as a prerequisite for any prisoner exchange. But like any high-stakes swap like this, nothing is final unless the prisoners are on the plane and flying back. Soon, former US Marine Paul Whelan, Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich, and journalist Alsu Kurmasheva were at Joint Base Andrews. They were greeted by President Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris, and their families.
It was a good homecoming. So looking forward to seeing my family down here and just recuperating from 5 years, 7 months, and 5 days of just absolute nonsense by the Russian government.
Since the war in Ukraine, America and Russia have been at loggerheads. There has been posturing and warmongering, but this is a win for diplomacy. While the war continues, this is a big win for both sides who have got their citizens back.
Our next story is about Pakistan. The South Asian nation is famous for exporting 2 things. The first, of course, is terrorism. The second is cheap labor. Every year, hundreds of thousands of Pakistanis leave the country. Their primary destination is the Arab world, mostly the Gulf Cooperation Council or GCC nations. These are Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Bahrain, Qatar, Kuwait and Oman. These are the GCC countries. These 6 countries take in a bulk of Pakistani migrants, mostly to work as laborers. Now, this arrangement is supposed to work for all the parties. The Gulf nations get cheap labor and Pakistan gets remittances. In the month of May, the remittances hit a record. $3.2 billion were sent to Pakistan, and the lion's share came from just 2 countries, that's Saudi Arabia and the UAE. Remittances from these 2 nations made up almost half of the total. And remember, this is Pakistan. It's a country that is always on the brink of bankruptcy. So these Gulf billions are essential. That is why the latest reports have sent alarm bells ringing in Islamabad. It seems that the Gulf nations do not want Pakistani laborers anymore. There are 2 major reasons for this. The first is the lack of skills. The Gulf nations are advancing. They have begun using more sophisticated tools in labor-heavy sectors like construction. The laborers from Pakistan are apparently not used to all of this. Many come from remote regions of Pakistan, areas that do not get adequate support from the government in Islamabad. And these workers often drop out of school before completing their education, leaving them unskilled and uneducated, of course, and unable to cope with advancing technology. So the Gulf nations are looking for alternatives. They're looking at countries that are training their workforce better, like Bangladesh. Pakistani senators have lauded skilled Bangladeshi workers, saying that they should serve as an inspiration and that Pakistan needs to follow suit. Islamabad has known about this issue for a while. A few months ago, the government made an announcement. It said it would start training millions of people, especially children who have dropped out of school. Islamabad wants to upskill them and then send these skilled workers to the Gulf. But that is a long-term solution which will not address the immediate crisis, the current crisis. So this is one reason why the Gulf is looking elsewhere. Pakistani workers are comparatively unskilled and they're being left behind. The second reason, however, is more alarming. It is linked to the behavior of some Pakistani migrants. 4 of the 6 GCC nations have made complaints and each one is unique. Saudi Arabia wants Pakistan to stop sending beggars and sick people. About 400,000 Pakistanis travel to the kingdom every year, 4 lakh Pakistanis. Many of them go on pilgrimage visas, but once they arrive, they indulge in begging. Saudi Arabia says that 90% of the beggars it arrested were from Pakistan. Now, Pakistan already suffers from a poor reputation internationally. The government keeps running around looking for loans from China, the International Monetary Fund, and even the Gulf nations. So Islamabad should take care not to inspire its citizens. Saudi Arabia has made that clear. Next, there's Kuwait. It is complaining about Pakistani nurses. Kuwait says that nurses from Pakistan keep shirking their duties. They dump basic chores on ward boys. They refuse to learn Arabic. And they keep trying to get transferred to Europe after just 6 months. Next is Qatar. Their complaint is rather benign in comparison. Qatar says the Pakistani workers do not adhere to safety regulations. The workers apparently do not like wearing helmets. Now, this is definitely an issue, but nothing compared to the UAE's complaint. The UAE has complained about two things: inappropriate behavior and criminal activities. Pakistani migrants have reportedly been caught making inappropriate videos. They were seen filming women in Dubai without their consent. This has angered Emirati officials who have expressed their concerns to Pakistan. The UAE's other issue with Pakistan is crime. About 50% of the UAE's labour force crime rate is attributed to Pakistanis. That's half of all crimes committed by the labour force. This does not reflect well on Pakistani workers and on Islamabad overall. After this report came out, Islamabad went into damage control mode. It has asked its overseas citizens to abide by the law and respect cultural norms wherever they go. Pakistan knows how essential its expatriate workers are. Their remittances are essential for keeping the government afloat. It needs to ensure that they toe the line, because if they don't, the whole country could collapse. Tensions are escalating in West Asia, and the repercussions of this are both big and small, obvious and strange. This story is about the last bit. Strange. The chief of Hamas, Ismail Haniyeh, was assassinated on Wednesday. We told you all about it. There has been an outpouring of grief across Muslim nations, including Turkey, which does not see Hamas as a terror group. People have taken to the streets in protest. They have shared condolence posts on social media. Instagram has been doing its best to block these posts. So Turkey's internet regulator has blocked access to Instagram, calling out the app's quote-unquote censorship. The irony is not lost on us. Here's a report.
Tit for tat, or what psychologists call childish vengefulness. As juvenile as it sounds, we see this play out in all kinds of human interactions, from competitive sports to business negotiations. But as human as it may be, countries employ this tactic all the time. And this week, Turkey seems to be doing the same. Tensions are escalating in West Asia. On Wednesday, Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh was killed in an explosion. His legacy is complicated. Yesterday, there was a massive procession. Iran led the prayers at Haniyeh's funeral. There has been an outpouring of grief. And not just in Iran. We're seeing this across Muslim nations. From Lebanon and Jordan to Turkey, people are taking to the streets. They are protesting Haniyeh's killing. There's an online movement as well. Condolence posts have flooded social media. But Instagram is not having any of this. Meta, the US company that owns Instagram, has started blocking these posts. And this is not sitting well with Turkey. A senior aide to President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has criticized the move. Turkish communications official Fahrettin Altun says this is censorship, pure and simple. He added that Instagram has not cited any policy violations for their action. Following this, at around 3 a.m. on Friday morning, Turkey's internet regulator blocked access to Instagram. The duration of the ban is not clear. The country has not given a reason for this move either. And Meta has not commented on it so far. But the reason is obvious. Tit for tat. And yes, the irony is not lost on us. Turkey is showing off that censorship can go both ways. This move is being widely criticized, but it doesn't matter because Turkey's internet regulator has the authority to slash bandwidth and restrict access to social media platforms in the country. This can happen under several conditions, like terror incidents or natural disasters. But usually, social media is restricted whenever the government deems fit. This move is worrying human rights organizations and opposition politicians who say that this diminishes their freedom of expression. That being said, people are finding newer ways to express themselves. They have simply moved to other platforms like X, formerly known as Twitter. But this time, attention has moved from condolence posts. Now, Turkey is being mocked widely. Look at this post on X. It shows a congested train with the tagline, X when Turks wake up to find that Instagram is blocked. This post is trending, but Turkey remains undeterred. After all, Ankara is a fierce critic of Israel's war in Gaza. It does not see Hamas as a terror organization. It wants people to post condolence messages for the former Hamas leader. So while another war is brewing in West Asia, it seems that Turkey is already fighting one with a tech giant.
Our next story tonight is about the land of pharaohs. Ancient Egypt has long seemed not only baffling and magical, but also mysterious. Despite centuries of research, a number of questions remain unanswered. But now, one mystery seems to have been solved. That of the 3,500-year-old screaming mummy, the mummified body of an ancient Egyptian woman. It was discovered in 1935 with a startling expression that has long puzzled researchers. The mummy's face is twisted and its mouth is wide open, as if it is screaming, has been screaming for eternity. And researchers finally have the answer to this. So why does this mummy seem to be locked in a scream? Why and how did ancient Egyptians mummify their dead? Here's a report.
This is The Scream, an iconic painting by Edvard Munch. It has long captured the human imagination. But what if we told you this painting has come to life in death? We are talking about this, the Screaming Mummy. This is a 3,500-year-old mummy of an ancient Egyptian woman. It was discovered in 1935. In a wooden coffin at a site near Luxor in Egypt. And since then, it has been one of the biggest mysteries in Egyptology. But why is it called the Screaming Mummy? Because of this startling expression. The mummy has its mouth wide open and locked for eternity. In what appears to be a scream. This may have triggered some millennial fears. Have you watched the movie, The Mummy? The Screaming Mummy has destroyed a good night's sleep for many and still fuels internet memes, like this one. Where a screaming mummy has been likened to a toddler screaming after not getting their way. And the human is screaming back to establish dominance. But memes aside, why is this mummy screaming? This question has puzzled scientists for years and now, they finally have an answer. The woman most likely died crying out in agony. Researchers suggest that her mouth was open due to a painful death or emotional distress, or a spasm that froze her face, and apparently the embalmers who mummified her were unable to close her mouth. So she was preserved as is. Her exact cause of death still remains unclear, but scientists have another fascinating finding. They have found no sign of an embalming incision. The organs are still inside the mummy, which is a surprise. Because the classic method of mummification included the removal of all organs, except the heart. This was important in the Egyptian religion. Ancient Egyptians believed that the body has to be preserved in as lifelike a manner as possible for the afterlife. So the organs were kept in separate containers and all the moisture was removed from the body. This was done so successfully that the mummified bodies continue to be well preserved, even 3,000 years later. After all, great efforts went into the mummification process. After death, it was usually the pharaohs of Egypt who were mummified. Hundreds of people could be involved in the process, and elaborate tombs were built for this. Though members of nobility and officials often received similar treatment, and occasionally, so did the common people. Because almost always, the mummification process was expensive. But we don't have to scream the obvious here. Despite the elaborate preparations, sometimes mummification didn't go as planned. If the screaming mummy could, it would most likely agree.
It's time for our latest segment, Joke of the Day. Today we're talking about Donald Trump. He said some crazy things in the past, but his new obsession beats all of it. Hannibal Lecter. Yes, I'm talking about this guy, a fictional serial killer created by an American novelist. His speciality? He would eat his victims. Now, I would normally suggest Googling him, but of course Netflix has an entire show dedicated to Hannibal, so maybe you can catch that. It's right below their 300 other shows on serial killers. But let's not digress. Why is Trump talking about Hannibal Lecter? No idea. He first mentioned Hannibal in October last year. Since then, it's been a constant feature in his speeches. He once recalled the late, great Hannibal Lecter. So many people ask the obvious question, does Donald Trump think that Hannibal was a real person? Thankfully, he doesn't. But he keeps name-dropping the serial killer at his rallies. You would think that's a bad strategy. But this is a guy who once said that he has a very, very large brain. So what do we know?
Hannibal Lecter, how great an actor was he? You know why I like him? Because he said on television, on one of the, I love Donald Trump, so I love him. I love him. Hannibal Lecter, right? This is Hannibal Lecter. Welcome to Hannibal Lecter, because we got a lot of them right now coming into our country and already came into our country. Hello, Clarice. But when I say Hannibal Lecter, they say, why does he keep mentioning it? Because Hannibal Lecter was a serious psycho, right? I'd like to have you for dinner. See the man with the wall? Stand up. Look at this guy. Did you ever hear of Hannibal Lecter? He was a lovely man. He would love to have you for dinner. He will take you. If he suggests, I'd like to have you for dinner, don't go.
Biologically man or woman. So, that is where the debate is. And somewhere at multidiscipline sports, where it creates a certain level of inequality, it impinges upon the basic rights of real women, basic rights of real men. And that's why, sporting bodies across the world need to think about creating a separate classification and create a separate stream itself for qualification, for participation, and give everybody a fair chance. I think that's where the argument is. The argument is about fairness. And fairness has to be both ways. In trying to be fair to one, you cannot be unfair to the other.
Absolutely. Anand, thank you so much for all of the details there. So gender row hitting the Paris Olympics 2024. Let's see where does it go from here. We are news from the Paris Olympics now. Now, Paris Olympics 2024 has faced a gender row controversy now. Algerian boxer Imane Khalif's swift 46-second victory at Paris Olympics has ignited a heated debate over gender eligibility. And this follows her disqualification from the 2023 World Championship for not meeting the International Boxing Association's gender criteria. Now, in a press statement, the IOC and Paris Olympics organizers affirm that everyone has the right to practice sport without discrimination. The Algerian Olympic Committee has defended Khalif and condemning the foreign media's criticism. They have called it malicious and unethical. They've also asserted their unwavering support for her and dismissed the allegations as baseless propaganda. Now remember, after the match, Angela Carini stated that I have never been hit so hard in my life. It is up to the IOC to judge now. Carini's remarks have garnered widespread support and raised questions about the integrity of the games.
And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. Israeli citizens mark 300 days since the Hamas attack on October 7th. Amphibious cars cruise Amsterdam's canals before an emissions ban. And a lone dolphin was spotted swimming in London's River Thames. Finally, we're taking you back in history. On this day in 1990, Iraq invaded its oil-rich neighbor Kuwait. It captured the Kuwait city in a few hours. The Emir of Kuwait fled to Saudi Arabia. Iraq not only gained control of 20% of the world's oil reserves, but also a substantial coastline on the Persian Gulf. We're leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. Have a great weekend.
Let's get started, and with the first story, ladies and gentlemen. A Delhi court on Thursday refused to grant anticipatory bail to former IAS trainee Pooja Khedkar. The court said custodial interrogation of the accused is required to unearth the whole conspiracy. The court further added that Pooja has deceived the UPSC and has snatched the rights of eligible aspirants with disability. Department of Personnel and Training is looking at the medical certificates of 6 other civil servants whose certificates were flagged off on social media platforms. 5 of these are from the IAS and 1 is from the IRS. Meanwhile, there's another twist in this entire scandal as reports hint that Pooja Khedkar may have fled Bharat. Reports suggest that she is actually fled to Dubai. Let's take a look at what the Delhi court said while denying Pooja Khedkar bail. First, Pooja's custodial interrogation is necessary. Secondly, the allegations against her are grave and serious. Thirdly, Pooja has cheated and defrauded the UPSC and snatched the rights of eligible aspirants with disability. Pooja Khedkar tried to use deceitful means. The cops must probe all those who abuse quota. Pooja Khedkar secured a visually impaired certificate from the Ahmednagar District Hospital back in 2019. In 2021, she secured a combined certificate for visual impairment and mental illness from the same hospital. In 2022, she secured a certificate mentioning locomotor disability in her left knee from the Yashwantrao Chavan Memorial Hospital in Pimpri. Reports say that while applying for the certificate, she showed a fake ration card claiming to be a resident of Pimpri Chinchwad. On the 8th of July, Khedkar was transferred from Pune to Washim for allegedly abusing her power. She demanded perks and favors despite her probationary period. In addition to this, she seized the office of an additional collector. This was followed by demands on social media users digging out her fake certificates that the UPSC dismisses her. On the 16th of July, the probationary officer was relieved from the Maharashtra District Training Program and was recalled to the Lal Bahadur Shastri National Academy of Administration LBSNAA in Mussoorie, where her training was suspended. On the 17th, an old video purportedly showing Pooja Khedkar's mother Manorama arguing with metro train construction workers in Pune surfaced. Days after that, another clip of her wielding a gun and threatening farmers went viral. On 17 July, Pune Municipal Corporation or the PMC took action against the encroachments outside Khedkar's family bungalow in Baner in Pune. A bulldozer was deployed to clear the encroachments on the footpath adjacent to her residence. The Kedkar family had reportedly beautified their property by extending into the footpath area with trees and plants, prompting a notice from the PMC.